Welcome to the briefing room. I'm your host, Chief David Molloy, Director of Public Safety with the City of Novi. And I'm very honored to have here in the briefing room today Ms. Barb Hankey. Barb's the manager of Oakland County Community Corrections, and she's here to talk to us a little bit about the programs that she offers and her staff offers to the citizens of Oakland County. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you, Chief.
Barb, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what it is Community Corrections is all about and what are the goals of Community Corrections?
Well, Community Corrections provides an array of services to the judicial officers of the county as sentencing alternatives, either as a sentencing alternative to jail or in conjunction with some jail time. And these programs are designed to be rehabilitative in nature and to help the offenders that are in the programs to reassess their behavior and hopefully to move them from that antisocial behavior to pro-social behavior.
Great. And you have a board that you work with, a Community Corrections Advisory Board, and you really bring together multiple disciplines. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, the Community Corrections Advisory Board is made up of several members, 13 different members, and those members are prescribed by statute. And of course yourself is one of those members of the board. And there's also representatives from the Sheriff's Office, from substance abuse agencies, from the district court bench, the circuit court bench, the probation department. So it really does bring several disciplines together.
And when we meet monthly, we talk about different solutions. We get your report, but we also talk about some of the issues that are facing us coming down the road.
Yes, I mean our meetings cover a wide variety of issues, from what programs we want to see where there's gaps in services, programs, new programs that need to be developed, as well as things like the budget and how we're going to fund all of the programs, the state application for the grant, which is through the Department of Corrections that we receive most of our funding.
Right. And tell us a little bit about your background, your education, and I know you sit on several prominent boards on the local and state level.
Well, that's a bit of a funny story because actually I don't have any criminal justice training specifically from at least the educational standpoint. My degree is actually in psychology, and I minored in French, so I don't know how that led to criminal justice, but I have a master's in administration as well. I started working with the county in 1988. I was a line officer for pretrial services. At that time, we only had 3 or 4 of us to cover the entire county. And from there, I spent a short amount of time in the probation department for the Troy District Court, then came back to Community Corrections when Community Corrections started at the county, and have basically been with Community Corrections ever since. Okay.
And you sit on some statewide boards and panels that you're really one of the leading experts in Community Corrections. Tell the viewing audience a little bit about that.
Well, thanks, Chief. Actually, I was the president of the Michigan Association of Community Corrections Advisory Boards for several years, and I'm still active in that board. I also do a lot of teaching for the National Institute of Corrections. About twice a year, we go to their training facility in Aurora, Colorado, and teach new pretrial executives all about the field. So that's always exciting.
Great. One of the big initiatives that you folks really kind of spearhead is the whole pretrial detention and pretrial services. Tell us a little bit about some of the offerings that you have and some of your staff members are actually spearheading and leading.
Well, pretrial services is one of our larger programs that we offer at Community Corrections, and it really has 2 facets. There's the screening and assessment facet of pretrial, and as you're very familiar with, that has to do with individuals on my staff being assigned to the different courts around the county and going to the police departments and interviewing the individuals that are arrested the night before and doing a comprehensive assessment to provide to the judge at the arraignment or their initial appearance.
And I tell you, that is so extremely valuable for the judge or magistrate to have that. And truly that saves us a lot of work from having a detective to go back there and do that. And when you have someone who's really, for the most part, impartial, they're not for pro-prosecution, they're not pro-release, they're just trying to get a true assessment on what type of ties to the community this individual has. Are they going to show back up for court? Are they the type of individual that should even be released on any type of bond or electronic monitoring? So we find that to be incredibly valuable for the court when we go in there. Saves us a lot of time. I think it saves the judge and magistrate a lot of times. They don't have to ask all these questions.
Absolutely. And we appreciate the cooperation that we've always received from the Novi PD. You've always understood the value of that because it is very valuable. The person is appearing in front of the judge and the judge knows nothing about this individual. So we do a comprehensive assessment to look at what risks this person may pose the dangerousness to the community, and put forth a release recommendation based on those factors.
And you have agents in all courts, all district courts throughout the county.
Almost all the courts. There are a few smaller courts where it's not conducive to us to have a full-time staff person there, but we do service all the courts in some fashion.
Okay. Some of the other initiatives, I think you, obviously, one of the main goals, I think, of community corrections is we always have a jail overcrowding problem. How does community corrections help the sheriff and the sheriff's office deal with that?
Well, we help by providing alternatives to jail for nonviolent felons and misdemeanors. Obviously, the jail should be used for those people that we find the most dangerous to the community and as some form of punishment. However, punishment can come in many forms, and holding someone accountable in many cases can be much more punishing for someone than just to sit in the jail and serve their 30 days. So by putting people into these programs, they can save the jail valuable bed space and be rehabilitative to the person as well.
I think that's the big goal of it. We need to reserve the jail space, not for someone who might get arrested for an MIP or a nonviolent shoplifting or something like that. We need to preserve that space for the really dangerous people that it's so important to get off the street.
Correct, and that's what we try to do. And by opening up bed space through not putting the pretrial folks that haven't been convicted of anything yet and letting them out pending trial until there is a resolution in their case, obviously frees up those beds for those sentenced individuals or those that are the most dangerous.
I know one of the key things that your staff and contractors are using are the electronic monitoring. Tell the viewers a little bit about, because that really, in my opinion, is going to be the future of corrections.
Well, what happens with electronic monitoring is an individual can be on several different types of electronic monitoring. Basically, it consists of wearing an ankle bracelet, and the ones that we use are all GPS. And so we're able to track an offender's movements or a defendant's movements, as well as put up exclusion zones and inclusion zones. And what that means is that the person has to stay within that boundary that we've set up for a specified amount of time. And if they leave that boundary, we're alerted. So an individual can have their home as an inclusion zone so that we can enforce curfews to keep them out of trouble in the evenings. And then if they need to go to work in the morning, we can allow travel time, all the while tracking them and their movements until they get to work and have their workplace as an inclusion zone as well.
Yeah, so if we're dealing with, let's say, a substance abuser, we know point A to point B, the route they're taking, so they're not stopping off at a drug house or stopping off to purchase substances or purchase alcohol. So that's got to be a more effective way to do things.
We believe so, and you're absolutely right. And in addition, we can also put exclusion zones around certain things like bars or schools or wherever we don't want these people to go, and we'll be alerted if they go into those areas.
But have we ever done any type of analysis on the financial savings from, I mean, it's got to be in the millions of dollars as opposed to having these people incarcerated to the tune of $70-some, $90-some a day, having them on the tether. And I think most importantly, they pay for the tether, right?
That's correct. In the state of Michigan, the statute basically indicates that if someone is placed on electronic monitoring for a pretrial, that cost is borne by the defendant. It costs about $6 to $8 a day to have someone on pretrial supervision, as opposed to the over $100 a day it costs to incarcerate someone at the county jail.
Wow. That's amazing. Great savings and great work that you are all doing.
Thank you.
We're going to take a real quick break here on the briefing room, so please stay tuned.
Warning, track set. Do not leave bags unattended.
Maybe you see something suspicious, but you don't want to get involved. It's nothing, you think. Can you be sure? If you see something, say something. Report suspicious activity to local authorities.
The magical thing about using energy wisely is that anyone can do it. Turn off lights. Use energy-saving light bulbs. And turn off computers and game systems when not in use. Make a change and we can really fly. Grab a grown-up and go online to energy.gov/kids.
Welcome back to the briefing room. We are still joined by Ms. Barb Hankey, manager of Oakland County Community Corrections, and we're discussing a lot of the programs and offerings that Barb and her staff have for the residents of Oakland County and what it is that they do in terms of protecting us and providing these initial offerings for inmates and people who are awaiting trial, and then obviously defendants who may be sentenced for minor misdemeanor offenses. One of the offerings I know is the drug court and a lot of the treatment courts that you and your staff work with. Tell the viewing audience a little bit about how those came to be and what we're seeing in terms of effectiveness and results.
Well, the drug courts really came out of a movement that started in Dade County in Florida. And basically the thing that's so different about the drug courts is the judicial involvement. The offenders that are sentenced into those programs are generally required to come back and see the judge about every 2 weeks. And that seems to be the key that really makes those programs successful, is that judicial involvement and having someone at that level really praise and be interested and involved in an offender's recovery.
Results, good? In terms of recidivism?
Yes, there's several different reports out. I believe the National just put out a report a few months ago, and it indicates that drug courts do work.
Yeah. And a lot of these people, I know in the past, we've from the city of Novi, we've actually donated bicycles to many of the people that are involved, because a lot of them don't have licenses and they don't have means to get back and forth. So we were happy to be able to partner with your team on that and donate. I think there was well over 70 bicycles that were just found and turned into us. So we're glad we can help support it in that respect.
That's a great help, and that's one of those really creative things that we can do in drug court. Because people don't realize that it is very difficult to get around Oakland County. It's 910 square miles. And if you don't have a car or you can't drive, you really need some other form of transportation. And many of them just can't afford the luxury of a bicycle. So having the police department do that was really great for many of the participants.
Another partnership that we engaged in with the judiciary at the district court was we actually sent all 3 of our judges to the National Drug Court Conference. I believe it was in Seattle a couple years ago. But what we did is we leveraged some of our federal drug forfeiture dollars to provide the judges that opportunity, because if we can, we're not going to solve the woes of our society and the problems with just the traditional lock everybody up and throw away the key. So if we can come up with these innovative ideas, and I was very happy to sit with the judges and meet with them. They wanted us to come with them. Unfortunately, with scheduling purposes, it wasn't possible, but that was a great investment of, we're actually using drug dealers' money to help train the judges and to help train staff. So we've seen some great benefits from that.
Yeah, and that's so valuable, because many people say that, you know, they can read about drug court and you can talk about drug court, but you don't really get drug court until you sit in on drug court. And really understanding it is the experience of being there and how powerful and how moving it can be.
Yeah. Another offering that you have is you have a weekend alternative for misdemeanants that certainly have done a lot of work here in the city of Novi. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Well, that's one of our programs that, you know, I'm so proud of, because it really is a win-win for everyone. Basically, we take offenders that have been sentenced into the program and we split them up into groups and we send them all around the county to perform work for nonprofit agencies and governmental agencies such as the Novi PD. We go to a lot of parks and recs. We do the Lakeland Arena cleaning, and we do a lot of work in Pontiac with the Oak Hill Cemetery and keeping that, you know, raked and clean of debris. So we do provide quite a bit of service, and it's a way for these offenders who have done a wrong but are not necessarily need to be locked up, but really need to repay the community, and they're doing it through this program. It's
interesting because I've actually seen some of the interactions. They kind of help us spruce our grounds up in the spring around not only our civic center but also the police department and a lot of our parks facilities. But they also help us with keeping our scout cars clean. It's not a great job, but it's a decent job, and they actually work real well with our fleet services personnel. And I have to tell you, they're all very respectful, and that's just another way. Normally, 10 years ago, those people probably would have been sitting in a jail somewhere on a weekend, and now we're actually out having them out in the community doing some good stuff.
Right, and why spend the taxpayer money to have them locked up just to sit there and really no one's receiving any benefit at all?
Right.
And especially with the cutbacks that many of the governmental agencies have experienced over the past couple of years, these folks are able to come in and do some of the work that's been, you know, laid to the side and folks haven't been able to get to because of the cutbacks. So it really is a win-win for everyone.
Speaking of funding, you do a lot of work with the state of Michigan and the Department of Corrections. Can you tell us a little bit of how that works in terms of this is basically, you're kind of helping them do a better job at monitoring and evaluating, and how does that work for residents of Oakland County?
Well, the Community Corrections Act started back in '88, and the premise of it was because the prison commitment rate, the number of folks going to prison was climbing. It was becoming out of control, and at that time the governor realized that we couldn't build our way out of the overcrowding problem. So they decided to offer grant money to locals, to the counties, if they basically created programs to keep nonviolent offenders locally instead of sending those folks to prison.
Okay.
And so that's what we've done. And we've received quite a bit of money to the tune of just close to $3 million from the state to run these programs.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. I know you used to run a program called Results, now switched over to the Sheriff's Office because they could do it in a more efficient and effective manner. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the Results is a drug and alcohol testing program. And because of the budget constraints that we had, the program was running great, but we wanted to expand it. But because of those budget constraints, we weren't able to do that, and we felt we were doing a disservice to the offenders and defendants that were using that. So we entered into talks with the Sheriff's Department, and because they already run a 24/7 operation, they were able to take that over and provide additional service that we could not to the participants.
That is great. I mean, they have those deputies that are there already, and it's keeping them probably more busy, but it's also allowing you to keep your staff level at a decent rate and an efficient rate, yet provide that service to somebody who's already running a 24/7 operation.
Correct, and so there really was a great cost savings for us, and the Sheriff's Department runs it with a lot of the part-time deputies, so they were able to provide jobs to those folks that may have been looking at layoffs. So it's really been a good situation.
Tell me, are we still have an effective work release in Oakland County, or is that going away with the electronic tethering and monitoring?
Well, the work release program is run by the Sheriff's Department. It is active currently, and it basically is like a virtual work release where individuals no longer report back to a facility in the evening. They're all on electronic monitoring, and they report back to their home, and that is saving a huge number of jail beds. And basically the idea behind it is if we could allow these people out during the day, if they're safe enough to be out in the community all day long, why are we having them take up jail bed space? And so that's really... And
that's a great point. But I think the key is if they are safe to be out, because you shared a report with me, and it was rather alarming. I'd never seen this, that 25% of all law enforcement officers that are killed have been killed from, I think it was 1999 to 2005. They were killed by individuals who were out on release for other violent offenses that they had committed.
Correct. And generally they were out on release on a financial bond posted through a surety. Or a bail bondsman. And one of the big cases, the Maurice Clemens case that happened in Washington State, where this defendant was out on a bond after assaulting 2 deputies. Surety posted the bond, he was out, and then he killed 4 officers while he was out. And we had our own similar situation not that long ago, just about a year or so ago, with Detroit police officer Huff, who was killed by a defendant that was out on a surety bond.
Those are tragic examples, but that's why it's important that we all work together, much like the Community Correction Advisory Board does. Sit down, and that's our duty. We have this leadership role in this criminal justice system to look at these, and I commend you, because I know you guys kind of have a little motto, thinking outside the bars, on your website, which really we have to. We cannot just build our way out of this. We cannot just sentence our way out of this. We have to think about these creative ways. So. Well, Barb, I want to thank you for joining us here today, and I appreciate the wealth of information you've shared with the viewers here in our area. And for you, the viewing audience, appreciate you tuning in, and keep watching Novi Television.